Hey students, today is Monday, March the 8th, and before we begin our lesson, we're going to do the retrieval practice link. So on the first slide for today, just go ahead and click on the retrieval practice link. We're going to complete that before we actually start the lesson. So math retrieval 3.8.21, go ahead and put your first and your last name, and for who is your teacher, that is going to be whoever your homeroom teacher is. So you're going to click on the bubble beside who your homeroom teacher is. First question, if you could grow up to be famous, what would you want to be famous for? Just a short answer. Just type it in there. Maybe it's a sentence or a few words. And for the next one, it says find the missing number. So the number you're looking for is going to be the first one. Some number minus 18 equals 24. So some number minus 18 equals 24. So you can use your notebook to help you to solve the problem. And your answer choices here are going to be 18, 24, 42, and 6. So whenever you solve it, go ahead and click on the answer choice that you think is correct. Next, what is 56 divided by 8? That's another one you're going to be solving in your notebook. Remember, we are not using calculators. Solve it in your notebook, and then choose your correct answer here. Lastly, if you could be invisible for a day, what would you do? Just type a short sentence here, or you can type it in a few words. Once you finish that up, go ahead and submit it. So once you finish it, go ahead and submit it. All right, so we've had a chance to complete the retrieval practice link. We're going to go back to our Google Slides. And of course, our next slide here is multiplication table that's here as just a resource for you. And on the next two slides, these are places where you can insert a picture of your work. And you would insert a picture of your work if you're working in your notebook, or if you're working in the math binder, you would take a picture of your work and insert them here. This is so that your teacher will be able to see your work and you can get credit for it. All right, so today we'll be talking about representing equivalent fractions on a number line. So we're going to kind of go back to the number line. We've had some practice on it this school year already, but we're going to continue on, this time representing equivalent fractions on the number line. And our learning target for today, the learning target is I can represent equivalent fractions with the denominators of 10 and 100 on the number line. Now our essential questions for this entire unit remain the same. We just continue to build upon them. How does the place of the digit within the base 10 system affect the value of the digit across the decimal point? And what is the relationship between fractions and decimals? Let's go ahead and go to our next slide. And we've got some questions here. The first one, how would you say 0.3? How would you say that? And the second one here, how would you write 0.3 as a fraction? So when I asked the question of how would you say 0.3, you wouldn't say 0.3. You have to say it in terms of our place value chart. Tenths, hundreds, thousands. Okay, so that's slide number 8, and we're going to come back to that in a second. But let's go to slide number 9 because that's similar. How would you say 0.30? And how would you write 0.30 as a fraction? So I want you to go ahead and pause our video and go back to those two questions, those two slides, number 1 and 2. And on the next slide is also 1 and 2. So pause our video and I want you to go ahead and see if you can answer. You can answer those in your notebook. Okay, so you've had an opportunity to write these in your notebook. The first one here on our first launch slide, how would you say 0.3? You would say that it's 3/10. 3/10. And I've got it written right here for you. How would you write 0.3 as a fraction? 3 is the numerator, 10 is the denominator. 3/10. And let's go to our next slide. How would you say 0.30? That is 30 hundredths. 30 hundredths. And I've gotten it written right here. How would you write 0.30 as a fraction? You would write it as 30 for the numerator and 100 for the denominator, 30 hundredths. So go ahead and, as usual, you can pause the video as often as you'd like to go ahead and make corrections to yours if you need to. So let's go ahead on to our next slide. If 3/10 and 30 hundredths are the same value, and they are, then is 3/10 and 3 hundredths also equivalent? Pause the video, and I want you to think about that for a minute and just consider the differences between those. So for that one, 3/10 and 3 hundredths are not equivalent. Let's go to our next slide to look at a visual. Now this is 3/10 because you're showing 3 rods that are shaded in out of the 10, and here you've got 30 hundredths. They are equal. Now back to our question of 3 hundredths. Now 3 hundredths would not be showing, it'll be in the hundreds grid, but you wouldn't have 30 shaded in. It would just be 3. It'll just be 3 units shaded in, and that would not be equivalent to 3/10. So that means that they would not be equivalent. All right, so moving on to our next slide. Now, for our next slide activity, walking to school, you're going to have 2 choices on how to complete this. One of them is going to be to complete page number 6 in your math binder. So you can complete this activity on page number 6 in your math binder, or you can complete it on the next 3 slides. So I've also kind of transferred over to the next 3 slides. So those are your choices: in the binder, on paper, or you can do it in the slides. Now remember, if you do it in your binder, then you would have to take pictures of your work and insert it into the slides in order for your teacher to see it. So let's take a look. Walking to school. Leo measured the distance to the important places in his community that he sees on his walk to school. He recorded his data in a chart. See, he's got several different places here that he's got listed, like the park, which is 1/10 of a mile from his home. The library is 30 hundredths of a mile from his home. The grocery store, 5/10 of a mile from his home. The post office, 6/10 of a mile from his home. The restaurant is 9/10 of a mile from his home. And school is 1 mile from his home. Okay. So we're going to go on and go to our next slide. Again, this is the same data, and I want you to go ahead and pause our video. Just kind of study it a little bit and kind of look at what you notice about, the differences in the distance. All right, so on the next slide, your task is going to be to drag the symbols to label each place on the number line. Write equivalent fractions or decimals in the boxes below the number line. So you've got all the different places. This is his home, and now you've got all the different places right here that he wrote distances down on his walk to school. And if we go back up, you'll see this picture represents the park. This one represents the library. This one represents the grocery store. This one represents the post office. You got the restaurant. You've also got a school. So your goal is going to be to drag the symbol to wherever you think it should be. So you drag the symbol to wherever you think it should be. And then once you drag it, your next task is going to be to put down an equivalent fraction or decimal to the fraction that's already listed on the number line. So I want you're going to pause the video, and maybe I'll work the first one together with you. Okay, so you've had an opportunity to place these symbols onto the number line on the next slide. To place these symbols onto the number line on the next slide based off of the distance from home for Leo. So when I go to the next slide, this is what I have here. So again, the instructions: drag the symbols to label each place on the number line. Write equivalent fractions or decimals in the boxes below the number line. So when we look at the park, remember, go back to the park, was 1/10 of a mile. That's the sum of a park. It was 1/10 of a mile. And back to this slide. So 1/10, when we look at the entire number line, would go right here. Okay, 1/10 is equivalent to 10 hundredths. You don't see it on the number line, but you don't see it here originally, but it is equivalent to 1/10 is equivalent to 10 hundredths. So that's why I placed it right here. And I also, in the box below, I decided to use a decimal for the first few of them. So that's 0.1 is 1/10. Now, and if you can see, I can keep on the bottom where I found equivalent fractions. When I found equivalences, for the second one, 20 hundredths, that's equivalent to 2/10. And the third one here, 30 hundredths, is equivalent to 3/10. And the fourth one, 40 hundredths, 40 hundredths is equivalent to 4/10. And here, 50 hundredths is the halfway point. That's equivalent to 0.5. Or I could have written 5/10 on here as a fraction. And now with 60 hundredths, instead of doing the decimals, I went on and decided to do the fractions. So I did 6/10. So 60 hundredths is equivalent to 6/10. 70 hundredths is equivalent to 7/10. 80 hundredths is equivalent to 8/10. Or I could have done 0.8 there. So I had a choice. 90 hundredths is equivalent to 9/10, and 100 hundredths is equivalent to 10/10. So now we found the park is at 1/10. Now we got the library is equivalent to is 40 hundredths or 40/10. So that's the library. So when we go back to the library, that was showing 30 hundredths. So let me make a correction on that one. So I should have that one right here. So that's 30 hundredths for the actual library. Okay, so now let's go to the grocery store. So the grocery store is 5/10 of a mile. So the grocery store is 5/10 of a mile. So that's equivalent to 50 hundredths. That's halfway. So I put that right here. And let's go back up to our next symbol. You got the post office. The post office is 6/10 of a mile from home. So the post office is equivalent to 60 hundredths. So I've got that right here. So next up, we should have the restaurant and then school. So let's go back and look at it again. So the restaurant is 9/10 of a mile and school is 1 mile. So restaurant is 9/10 and school is 1 mile. So restaurant is right here. It's equivalent to 90 hundredths. And of course, the school is 1 mile away. And 100 hundredths or 10/10 is equivalent to 1. They're equivalent to 1 whole. So you can pause this video as often as you like again and go ahead and make whatever corrections that you need to make to yours. So in our next part right here, this is where you're going to put your explanation for why you decided to put the symbol in the place that you put it. And your explanation, each person's explanation could be a little bit different, but there's some things that you should be including in there. When you decide to put it wherever you put it, you should consider the place value of each. So you should put it on each place on the number line based off of its value. And some of the fractions that we had, they're not specifically showing those numbers on the number line, but guess what? You found an equivalent fraction. So another thing you should be writing is that you found an equivalent fraction to it. Our next slide is going to give us an opportunity to take a closer look at the number line. So what I'm going to do is click right here. If we click right in the middle, it gives us that zoomable number line that we've actually practiced with a few times. So this is our number line here. So with this number line, you can be able to zoom in or zoom out on the number line. We're going to focus on 3/10. Let's focus on the decimal 3/10. which we know 3/10 is less than a whole. So in actuality, it's going to be less than this 1 right here. So what I'm going to do is take my number line and kind of scroll this way so that I can see the 0 to 1. So what I'm going to show you is that 3/10 is going to be right in between 0 and 1. So all I got to do is keep zooming in between 0 and 1, and we'll be able to see because it's going to start partitioning itself. You see, it started partitioning itself into 10 equal parts now. So the more that I zoom in, the more that I'm going to be able to see in between that 0 and 1. Oh, so now you see that the tenths have appeared between 0 right here, and this is 1. And now you see 1/10, 2/10, 3/10. So here's the 3/10. It's actually between 0 and 1. So now that I have the tenths in there, if I keep zooming in, I'm going to be able to see. Let's see what we see when I continue to zoom in. And I should get to my hundreds. Now the hundreds have appeared. So these are the hundreds. In between each tenth is what we call the hundreds. And at this point right here, this is equivalent to 30 hundreds. So you go from 0 to 1/10, that's 10 hundreds. And from 1/10 to 2/10, that's another 10 hundreds. That's 20 hundreds. And from 2/10 to 3/10, that's 30 hundreds. So this shows you that 3/10 and 30 hundreds are the same. They're the same, have the same value. Next task is going to be for you to watch a really short video. It's an online tutorial video here for you. And all you got to do is click right here inside of the TV, and it's a short video that talks about what are equivalent decimals. All right, so that's part of your independent work for you to do that. And when you finish that task, let's go to our very next slide. Our independent practice continues. And here on this slide, you're going to have a choice about how you complete the next activity. You can complete it in the slides. You can complete it in the next 3 slides, or you can work on page 27. So you can complete the task, the last independent practice task on the next 3 slides, or you can complete it on page 27. So remember, if you complete it on page 27, you're going to have to take a picture of your work and insert it into the slides so that your teacher can see your work. Now, what you're going to do is, let's go to the very next slide. You're going to answer the question. Then you're going to have to prove your thinking by creating a number line. And then you're going to have to explain your thinking in words. So this one, Dwayne has 5/10 of a cake. Andrew has 50 hundredths of a cake. Michael says that they all have the same amount of cake in decimal form. Is Michael correct or incorrect? And just to pick your answer, just move the star to the correct answer. If you think it's correct, you move it over here. If you think it's incorrect, you move it over here. And I've included the number line, the zoomable number line link right here to help you with this if you need help with it. All right, so I've gone ahead and added the just to help you as a manipulative tool. I've got the base 10 blocks right here that can help you if you need it, and also the number line I put on this slide for you. Remember, you still got to mark it correct by moving the star. Now, the very next one, you're going to be drawing a number line. I want you to draw a number line based off of the 5/10 and the 50 hundredths. I want you to be able to show that on the number line. So there's a couple different ways that you can do it. You can use the scribble tool to do that. Just come up here. So the number line is already there. So if you use the scribble tool, of course, remember you got to label it. Of course, that side is going to be 0, and down here it's going to be 1. Let me go back. So down here it's going to be 1, and what you have to do is, again, you want to show 5/10 or 50 hundredths. Wherever you think it is on this number line, I want you to label it. And once you label it, it'll be here. You're done with it. Now, another way that you can do it is you can use what's called the canvas tool. So you can click right here, on this little link. And when you click in here, let me clear this out. You're going to create a new drawing. You can choose your color over here, whatever color you want. And I'm going to draw me a number line. And I'm going to go ahead and label it. So I got 0 right here, 1 right here. Let's say if I wanted to make 5/10, put that right there. That's the same as, is equivalent to 0.5. So I've got that. So I've done me a number line if that's what I want to do. So now all I got to do is come on over here and I'm going to save the image. So you click in the 3 dots and you save that image. And if you'll see, the save image appeared at the bottom of my screen. So it's going to appear at the bottom of your screen. All I got to do now is just click on that. Let it open, give it a chance to open. And that's what I just created. So now I just got to copy it. So I'm going to go over here and click on the 3 dots again. And now this time the copy came up. So all I got to do is click copy. And I can go out of this. I'm going to go back to my slides. So now I'm going to click inside of the slides. And I'm going to click, right click in there. And oops, oh, that's not what I wanted. So I'm going to right click. I need to do paste. Okay, so that means I got to go back. So I'm going to go back to my canvas. I'm going to do that one more time because I wanted to click the, so I'm going to save the image again. And here it is. It appears right here. Now I'm going to go back up and I'm going to click copy. So I did that one too many times. I needed to paste it and not copy it. So I'm going to go out of that. Now I'm going to go back to myself. Okay, so now I click in. So instead of hitting copy, I'm going to paste it in. Okay, so that's what I just created. That's my number line. And you can do it that way again, or you can just use the scribble tool to do your number line. Your next slide, this is where you're going to explain your thinking. So you're going to just type in there, and you're going to type a couple sentences just explaining why you decided to make your number line the way that you did, and why you decided to put your fractions to wherever you put them, and explaining why you chose correct or incorrect for that one. So that's what your explanation is going to be for. And lastly, this is just a reminder of what we need to do. So you're going to complete the independent work on page 27, or if you did it in the slides, that's fine. And also, you're going to have to do Dreambox and Khan Academy. So you can work on Dreambox and Khan Academy, and you've already got Khan Academy decimals assigned to you by your teacher.